and welcome to this panel on the silent P, adding philanthropy to public-private partnerships. My name is Lorenzo Pavone, and I work at the OECD Development Center, and I will be the moderator of this fascinating discussion. I would like to start by inviting the speakers to the stage, starting with Ofowe Aig Imokwede, the Executive Vice Chair of the Aig Imokwede Foundation. A big round of applause. Frank Aswani, CEO of the African Venture Philanthropy Alliance, AVPA. Mamadou Biteye, Executive Secretary of the African Capacity Building Foundation. Faustina Fin Niame, Executive Director, Africa, Children's Investment Fund Foundation, CIF. Richard Gomez, Chief Program Officer, Shell Foundation. And Asai Pompei, President of the Goldman Sachs Foundation. So welcome. It's a pleasure to moderate this interesting panel. You know, in marketing, you have 3 Ps, 4 Ps, 5 Ps. This is another way of looking at the Ps. And in particular, it's interesting to talk about private-public partnerships and philanthropy. I would say that it would be interesting to know who is in the room, because we're talking about public-private partnerships, we're talking about philanthropy, and we are in a business forum. So I would like to start by asking how many company representatives are in the room. So please raise your hands. Okay, not surprisingly, in a business forum, we have a lot of hands. But how many government representatives or representatives of public institutions in general are in the room? Okay. How many representatives of foundations are in the room? Right. Okay. Well, I would say that the majority is private sector, but public institutions and foundations are also present here. And I would like to build on this by looking at some of the analysis that we conducted at the OECD in recent years through a publication, Private Philanthropy for Development. In 2018, we published the first edition, and we asked foundations if they had regular collaborations with other stakeholders. And at that time, they told us that foundations in general have regular collaborations with other foundations, 78%. With government, 67%. With social entrepreneurs, 61%. And only a small percentage at frequently engaging with businesses and multinationals, only 24%. And the latest survey, which we conducted 3 years ago, shows that 65% of foundations have at least one collaborative project with private funders of other partners, including governments and international organizations. So there is an interest in promoting more collaboration, but not so much with the private sector. So given the significance of this topic, in the next edition that we are about to start now, we will dive deeply into the types of partnerships the foundations have with other actors. And what better place than this panel to kick off this discussion. And so I would like to start with a first question to Frank. And in particular, why is this conversation important now? How do you see the role of partnership for philanthropy evolve in Africa?
So thank you, Lorenzo. We're on course to only meet 2 of the 17 SDGs by 2030. And the opportunity cost for Africa is huge if we continue on this trajectory where we're not addressing issues from youth unemployment, food security, climate impact, so on and so forth. The backdrop of all of this is we're a continent whose sustainable or development agenda has been funded largely by aid and government funding. We've seen a huge decline in aid to the continent. One of the biggest things that should worry all of us in this room, what happens in November at the US elections if Trump comes back, because he did cut aid the last time. So we need to start thinking about what impact will that have on the continent. If you think about how much we need to solve the SDGs in the world, it's about $4 trillion. Capital and financial markets in the world are sitting on about 100 times that. The world of impact is not short of money. We're short of risk capital. Capital that will help fund and test new products, new innovations, and help scale them. The only capital that can do that, that's got an appetite for risk, is philanthropy. Philanthropy is a bridesmaid in that equation. Without them, the wedding is not happening. But at the same time, we can't achieve the SDGs without private capital coming into this space. So the significance of private capital converging profit and purpose is even more important today than ever before. So this particular conversation is so important now because we need collaboration between the different types of capital and players with their varying risk appetites. We need the philanthropists to take the lead in innovation, funding innovation and funding early stage opportunities, and for private capital to scale those ones they're proven.
Thank you. And capital is a very important topic. But before I ask the next question, communication, would it be possible to turn off that speaker over there? Because I have a bit of an echo in my ears. But anyway, I wanted to ask now Ofo a question about capital. And how can philanthropy play a catalytic role in facilitating PPPs, building on what Frank just said? Can you provide concrete examples on how your foundation has played this role?
Yes, thank you. I would say that philanthropy is a bridge. We're a connector. If you look at the sectors that we're dealing with, the private and the public sectors, they have very different priorities, very different ways of working, and there's a lot of mistrust and disconnect. I think sometimes, even if the private sector wants to help, they don't know how to help. They don't know that any funds or any resources that they put towards the problem will actually help to solve the problem. And so this is where philanthropy can step in. Philanthropists can have some skin in the game. They can, as Frank said, innovate, put some funding, and then others will see proof of concept and follow. So the Agi Mokode Foundation, what we do is focused on public sector transformation and access to healthcare. And in Nigeria, public sector is a very, very difficult topic. There's issues with corruption, and people don't trust the public sector. But we have identified initiatives that we can put our commitment towards. So we entered into a partnership with the Federal Civil Service. We helped them identify their reform initiatives, and then we support them on particular areas where we think that impact will be had. So one of these is digitalization. And once we started the process, we were able to bring on partners to help us. So we have support from the Coronation Group, the Access Group who bring know-how. We have support from Microsoft Philanthropies who comes in and trains the civil servants. And they see that we have been working very closely with the civil servants and they trust us. So they bring their funding. So I think that if philanthropists take the risk and actually engage with the public sector, they will see that there is room for growth and hopefully bring other private sector entities on board with them.
Thank you. This is very interesting, and it looks like you identified a problem and you worked on a solution, and then you gather other partners to work with you. And this is like you found an untapped, I would say, potential for philanthropy's collaboration with other actors. And actually, I want to ask exactly this question now to Faustina. What is the untapped potential of philanthropy's collaboration with other stakeholders? Can you provide a success story?
Okay. Yes, happy to. First of all, let me just kind of explain the kind of organization I work for. It was founded by Sir Chris Hahn. He's a hedge fund. He owns a hedge fund, one of the most successful ones in the UK and globally. And so as an organization, I would describe us as having a hedge fund brain and a social impact heart. And so his biggest reason and passion for why he wanted to set up this CIF, Children Investment Fund Foundation, was purely because he wants to solve the biggest problems in the world. He doesn't want to be a grant maker. We don't see ourselves as a grant maker. So it's with this philosophy why I'm going to share this story. And it's so important that we do collaborate together as philanthropists. Even this morning, listening to the panel, the opening, I saw so much opportunity, but I've also seen a lot of silos. As philanthropists who work on the continent, this is the first time I'm meeting many people on this panel and many people in this room. And we are all doing very similar things, I've just realized. And imagine the impact that we could make as a collective if we worked together in a more efficient and more systematic way. So recently, last year actually, and I can't believe we did this. Within 3 months, we, as in CIF and some of our partners, End Fund, the Crown Prince team from Abu Dhabi, the Gates Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation at the time, and came together because we wanted to eradicate 2 NTDs, Onco and LF. And we know how much it was going to cost us to eliminate from this continent. And it's going to cost us 500 million. Within 3 months, we had raised 400 million. And we launched it at the RLMF at COP28 this year. And that's really the power of this collective collaboration and working within the ecosystem. We've got 100 million to raise, and we know we've got this. We're already talking to partners who are going to come in with us. But we're going to be able to, stop the suffering and sometimes death of individuals, because now we have the resources, we've got the right partners, we've got the right governments. So it wasn't just us as well. Some African governments that we're working with also contributed to the fund. And I think that's really important. And I'm so glad we've got our government partners in this room today, because we do want to work with you. Because I think we can never scale as philanthropists. We can never make that transformational change that we desire. It's all, we're using your platforms, your systems to be able to do that. And so that's my response to that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Faustina. Can we say that in a way you have a kind of a private sector approach to philanthropy, which probably resonates with many people in the room? And in this sense, actually, I want to ask the next question to Richard, and because they also have an innovative way of engaging in their work. And in particular, Richard, can you tell us, for you, how can philanthropic capital unlock more private capital to drive Africa's sustainable growth?
Thanks, Lorenzo. So maybe I'll answer your question with starting with a sort of example of how this can work. So if I take the off-grid renewable energy sector, so this is a sector that has many sort of commercially viable businesses now operating in Africa, serving households, farmers, small businesses, retailers, transporters with renewable power, off-grid renewable power. And if you think about these types of businesses, you're talking about solar home systems, mini-grids, you're talking about solar irrigation, solar refrigeration, biogas, electric vehicles, for example. Now, early days, but I mean, this sector is driving significant impact, raising health, education, and income for these populations. And it's grown to the point where it's a $3 billion market, right? It's raised $3 billion in capital, and foundations have made that possible. Real support to make that possible, and tens of millions of people in Africa have been served as a result. But if I go back 15 years ago, none of those businesses existed. So it took a small number of foundations that played a pivotal role by providing grant in a few different areas. So they provided grant to, and as we were part of that group, we provided grant to test new technologies, test new business models, to demonstrate that those could work at scale, to demonstrate the economics, to build intermediaries that could support distribution and consumer finance, to anchor new funds that would leverage capital from the private sector by blending finance, but also look at the gender equity in the sector, also look at impact monetization, and then grant to establish trade associations and non-profits that could provide critical market data to investors and policymakers. So we've seen it's possible, and if I look at Shell Foundation's portfolio, our charity has a portfolio of enterprises that have served 270 million people, and they've leveraged $9 billion of private and public capital to put to work for that end. But I would say our aspiration is that $3 billion market grows to a $300 billion market, and that won't happen without far more deployment of risk-tolerant, patient, flexible funding, which is the type of funding that foundations have. And I would see maybe two ways that we could change the rate of that deployment. One is that I think foundations need to continually evolve and learn how to deploy funding well. And this is a continual evolution for us. And we've changed our model, our investment strategy, the composition of our team, our investment processes, and really importantly, our comfort with risk and failure and acceptance of failure quite substantially, and we'll continue to do so. And the second area is, I think we talked about pooled funding. And the reality is there is not enough of this funding around, even if it was deployed well, of this risk-tolerant funding. So concessional funders, not just foundations, but foundations, donors, DFIs, need to work together differently. So we've started establishing bilateral partnerships with different funders along the capital continuum, with FCDO, with DFIs like BII, FMO, DFC, and then with some of the ESG impact funds. And that's created a $700, $800 million pool, continuum, which is hoping to deploy grant guarantees, concessional loans, and development finance to bridge to the corporates, the VCs, and the ESG investors. And we hope to, by designing capital in that blended way, enable them to materially invest far earlier than they would otherwise.
Thank you, Richard. You were talking about raising more capital. In our latest Africa's Development Dynamics report, a report that we publish the Development Center with the African Union Commission, we estimated that we need every year approximately $194 billion for Africa to achieve the SDGs. So, in addition to what's already there. So that shows the importance of this discussion and how to mobilize this extra money. And I would like now to take Asai's views on an aspect also that Richard mentioned about entrepreneurship, and how can the work of the Goldman Sachs Foundation contribute to the efforts to create more jobs and support women entrepreneurs in particular?
Sure. So, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here with this distinguished group of panelists. I've worked at Goldman Sachs for 18 years, and I have to say I did not grow up in philanthropy. I'm a lawyer by training. I remember when I was a kid, I told my dad I wanted to be an air hostess, and he said, go back and think about something else that you would want to do. I said, lawyer. He smiled, and I became a lawyer. And so I joined Goldman Sachs working on mergers and IPOs. And I say that to say this. When I came into the space and was tapped by our CEO, David Solomon, to become president of the foundation, I brought an M&A mindset to philanthropy. And so Faustina is spot on. So many of us are working on solving similar problems. So I said, well, we need M&A of philanthropy. We need to just get all of these amazing organizations together, less overhead, more impact. And I remember someone sat me down and they said, the problem, Asahi, is logos and egos. And if you can find a way around that, then we can unlock that triple P, that silent P of philanthropy, and more of the public-private partnership. And so one of the programs we have at the firm is our Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women program. In a nutshell, it's an MBA free of charge, available in 5 languages for entrepreneurs, sort of big business working and helping women entrepreneurs. And we had partnered with the IFC on a capital facility to go in tandem with that educational module. I say all that to say this. What we decided to do to try to break through that logos and egos issue that we all know, if we're to thine own self be true, exists, is to say, give it away. Give it away free of charge to any organization or bank that wants to use it. And so we have now signed an MOU with the IFC to put that curriculum on developing banks all across the globe. Because we want to make sure that if you've got a great tool, if you've got a great product, then collaboration is going to be the way that you can ultimately increase the blast radius of impact, and we've all got to find ways to do it together.
Thank you, Asahi. On a side note, when I was a child, I wanted to become a bus driver. I ended up doing something else.
Bus driver, I love
it. But I wanted to conclude this first round of questions with Mamadou, because there is another aspect to the equation that we need to take into consideration. We are looking at increasing capital, more innovative ways to work together, but is the counterpart ready to absorb more capitals coming and basically work with us in a way that means more engagement on their side? So how can we strengthen the capacity of local actors to absorb these new forms of investment?
Thank you very much. We can look at this question from different perspectives. Talk a lot about the lack of funding or the inadequacy of funding, but most of the funding available on the table is actually not accessed enough or not fully utilized because of several reasons. First of all, it's the capacity to prepare projects, bankable projects that are fundable, actually is an important aspect to allow access to those resources. Then you can look at, and what we see from our perspective on the ground are around skills as well. And you would be surprised, but these can be very, very, very basic skills. Skills such as just planning, execution, basic project management skills, and others are extremely important, and we see this gap on the ground. But that is not just enough. You have also institutional capacity. Because if you look at it, it's really the two sides of the same coin, right? You can have highly skilled employees, but if they are not in conducive, well-functioning institutions, that may not yield the expected results. So investment in institutional capacity, and what I mean by that is just ensuring that actually there is a good conducive governance, the basic processes, procedures are in place, evaluation mechanisms and also accountability mechanisms are in place. Those are extremely important. But what we see is oftentimes we ask local actors to do more with less. We focus more on their technical capabilities, but nobody really invests in the capacity building. So basically we think that what can address this is actually adopting what I could call a golden rule that allocates a minimum of 15 to 20% of every project funding to actually capacity building. And final point I'll make is that also doing that will help local partners actually retain their talent, because talent retention is a big challenge. We see oftentimes many of the most talented, people, staff in the local organizations, partners, finally being recruited by their international partners. So local actors have always, to chase the same thing with the burden of recruiting, training, but ultimately not being able to retain. So retention is going to be a capital element in the capacity building of local partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mamadou. You mentioned topics like institutional capacity, execution, planning, but I would like to think about accountability as an important one, because the ownership is local. So, and with that also has to come accountability. About skills also, we are going to discuss this topic probably at the International Economy Forum on Africa later in November, because this year the African Union Commission is putting skills on top of the policy agenda, and we're going to try to build on this, and I think this discussion will continue at that time. Okay, so we finished the first round, and now I would like to ask the same question to some of you, starting from the other side with Ofo, and it's the same question. And it's about the current situation today, which we heard also already in the opening session, some of this, let's say, current socio-political context that changed many things, and also potentially the way in which philanthropy works. So how has the philanthropy changed in Africa following what happened in the recent years? Has it increased the need to work in partnership with other actors?
I would say yes, definitely. I mean, we heard this morning, we have a very young population. They have access to technology. They're beginning to demand more of their governments. They know their rights, and they know what is available in the rest of the world. And they want that for themselves. On the other hand, you have governments across Africa that have limited resources. And the potential to leverage technology to actually address the needs of the citizens is there, but the resources aren't available. And so it makes governments more amenable to partnering with private sector, philanthropic organizations and so forth. And also, on the other side, entities like ours, we see the potential. We see the potential impact that could be had if resources were channeled in the right way, with the right structures in place to helping to address these needs. The Igi Foundation, as the chairman of the foundation announced this morning, has committed $100 million over 20 years in partnership with Access Bank, who has committed double that amount to addressing some of these needs. And there's so much that we can do with innovation. There is so much that we can do when we work together. And what we're basically saying to all the private sector entities, because we know that there is money in Africa, there is resources in Africa that keeps going out. Channel your money into investing in the continent, into addressing the needs of the young population. And we have seen the example of India. We have seen the example of Asia. And basically, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. as Frank said, really, the gaps are there, huge gaps. We haven't met any of our SDG goals. So we have to do things differently. And the only way that we can is channeling local resources, working with local private sector entities to put our money where our mouth is, basically, and support the work of the future.
Thank you. So private sector, you heard the call, and now let's work all together. And Frank, same question to you. So has the current socio-political context changed the way in which philanthropy works in Africa?
So we are the generation that have been blessed with a crisis, and you know they say you never waste a crisis. We've seen more crises in the last 5 years than our parents ever did in a lifetime of 70, 80 years. And it'll be a real pity to our kids if we don't come out better than we went in. COVID taught us we're at the back of the queue. George Floyd's murder showed that, death showed that the inequalities are not just racial. We've looked at the Russia-Ukraine war. Ukraine sneezed, Africa went hungry. It's unacceptable. We can't afford to continue like that. We've got to find a way to be a lot more creative about how we solve this problem with local African solutions. And we have to own this. Right now, there's a very big perception that impact capital is foreign capital. Our money here is for investment and making money. We need to bring more private capital into this space. But also for the businesses, I think we have to understand the risk of not solving these issues today. If we continue at the pace we're going, pension funds, you'll have no one to feed into your pension funds in the next couple of years if youth unemployment is not solved. Banks, you'll have no customers if there are no people working. It's no longer just an issue of a social challenge, it's a business risk as well. So we've got to start thinking creatively that it's business's business to solve today's social opportunity. But also there's huge opportunities. We're seeing increasing data showing that in solving for human need and addressing SDGs, you can make money. As Faustina said, this is not a solution to be sustained through grants. There's real investment opportunities through those processes. But we've got to take the lead as Africans to solve this problem. We've got to unlock more local private capital, especially. So CIF and AVPA will be launching a catalytic pool fund very imminently. We want to mobilize in 5 years $200 million to unlock 10x in private capital. And we're deliberately targeting local institutional capital. There's $1.1 trillion sitting in dormant capital in Africa, pension funds, insurance companies, dormant bank accounts. That money could be put to better use. Okay, there's stuff around that we need to think about. In addition to that, faith-based investing is growing. Someone was telling me the other day that Kenyans give $60 million to the church every Sunday. That money could go to youth unemployment. Okay, diaspora savings, not diaspora remittances. Diaspora remittances now are 3x aid. Okay, we're the only continent in the world that has more aid than we have startup capital. We've got to change that, but we've got to own the solutions.
Thank you, Frank, for these enlightening words. Mamadou, same question, maybe different answer.
Yeah, in the evolving context and how this is affecting the way philanthropy works in Africa, I think that you can really see a mixed bag of different things. You can look at it first from philanthropy itself, changes in philanthropy, because we're seeing more high net worth individuals on the continent and much more private foundations or corporate foundations coming into the mix and actually having a completely or a different approach. So these actually want to actually invest to unveil proof of concepts that actually can be scaled using actually the business model or the business chain of their corporates. So that linkages is actually something new that we are observing. But when you come to public-private and philanthropic partnership, we can observe also before that many foundations actually intervened without necessarily connecting very much with the public sector, actually. A strong with their dollars, actually, would come and implement whatever program or project they felt was actually good for the context. And also then expecting government to pick up these solutions and scale them without having a prior engagement with government, and investing where actually, and aligning their investments with the public sector. But we see, but this was not entirely the fault of philanthropic organizations, because also perhaps we had observed also probably what I could call adverse regulation that was somehow shrinking the space and bringing a velleity of control over what philanthropy does. But we are seeing today governments that actually are seeking for new approaches, particularly when you look at the global financial architecture. Today, that does not play in that favor. They are more and more keen and compelled to look at new approaches. So basically, there is a real opportunity actually to get those commitments, to pick up scale, but most importantly, put the policies and regulations facilitating in place that would allow actually to pick up and scale innovative but also proven concepts. So this is just to say that and we can really learn from examples that have worked on the continent. I can take the example of Kenya in a previous life of mine, where we worked on digital jobs, and we're actually partnering with the Ministry of ICT, partnering with the private sector association. Actually, we were able to provide philanthropic capital to test how you can provide connectivity to young people, provide training, and give them opportunity to become entrepreneurs by harnessing the online job market. But it's really bringing private sector to outsource on the online job market, because they could see a viable talent being built, and the government, seeing that, was actually willing to invest in creating those centers whereby young people can go and have access to internet, apply for jobs, get those jobs, and actually earn and create more opportunities. So those are the kind of also examples also that I think that different partners are open to, and we need to explore more. Thank you.
Thanks, Mavdamu. In a way, we could change the title of the panel from adding philanthropy to public-private partnerships to adding philanthropy to public-private alignment, in a sense that there is a need really to work together from the inception and not say, hey, this is the project, now it's yours. Anyway, Faustina, for you, you will be the last to answer this question. We kept another one for the last two panelists. But Faustina, what do you think? You don't want to, if you don't want to intervene about that, I can ask another question. But no, I'm kidding. So please tell, how has philanthropy evolved based on the current socio-political context? Has it increased the need to partner with other actors?
Yeah. I think that, you know, we've gone through the last 10 years, almost crisis after crisis after crisis. We can't do business as usual. It's not going to work. We're not going to be able to solve the biggest problems in our societies by doing the same things. We need to really think very, very differently. We've just come out of COVID. The world is so divided when you think about politically, when we think about people's beliefs. There's the racism aspects, what we saw with George Floyd. It's made us all think a little bit more differently. There's a shrinking fiscal space that I mean, it's not been seen before. And, you know, the aid that we used to see in Africa, especially from the bilaterals. And do you know what? I'm not sad that we are in the position that we are when it comes to philanthropy and aid in Africa, because I think this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to really redevelop, rethink about how we want things to moving forward. We can't continue in this way where we are almost, things have been dictated by outside Africa. We're not sitting at the table, we're not on the menu, we didn't make the table, all of this, we can't do it. I think in this conference, in this room, we have to find out what is the new way of us presenting aid and how do we solve the challenges. And I would say that we need to, of course, it's been said on this panel, unlock domestic finance. That's how we are thinking about it as an organization. Unlocking dormant capital, working with private sector, because private sector knows how to solve problems in the most sustained, systematic way, but also how do we do it with the financial incentives, the right incentives in the right place to make sure we get to the last mile. And then Philanthropic has a role. We can, and I'll give you an example, a school feeding program that we're working on in Kenya, that it's a deal that, as you were saying, Mahamadou, before, that we brought the government right at the beginning of it. We designed it with the government and a provider, and it's between the government, the national government, the county government, and also parents themselves co-pay into this. And then, you know, philanthropy, our work was really to pay for the kitchens and so forth. So it was the capex part of it. And children are being fed, right? And we have an ambition as an organization. Every single day, we want to feed 400 million children. That is huge. It's scary. It's audacious when I think about it. But I know it's possible. And I'm going to be coming to all of you to help us make that happen, because without healthy next generation of Africans who are able to really contribute, you know, to the African population and, you know, unlocking the whole, you know, girls, keeping girls in school and so forth, we won't have the Africa that we want. We would have missed this opportunity. So let's reshape the whole thinking around how we use a crisis as an opportunity.
Thank you. Let me just add one data on this. Every year in Africa, 31 million people reach working age every year. So that means that we need to create the opportunity to create jobs, formal jobs, for an additional 31 million people every year. And this starts when they're children, with their education, making them ready. So on the one hand, we need to create jobs, but also need to create people that are ready to take them. Okay, the last couple of questions are for the two representatives of corporate foundations. And Richard, I start with you. How can corporate philanthropy become more collaborative?
Just a tiny question. Have least access to essential services. There are some great examples of partnerships out there. There are also some really bad examples of partnerships out there that don't do very much. So where I think corporate foundations can maybe up our game is in bringing the full range of our assets to bear. And, you know, we've talked about access to risk-tolerant capital, But here I mean, and we've referred to it already, but you know, the kind of, we're not seeing it so often in the corporate foundation space, but we are established as an independent charities. We have an independent board, I'm dripped on. We have our own endowment, we have independent trustees, and that allows us to genuinely partner across the private and public sector. So I'll give you an example of this in action. So last year we launched a new strategy, and the intent of that strategy is to raise They're not providing energy, but they're already serving those customers. And we can come in, and these are the likes of Afex and TLG and MasterCard and Davis and Shirtlift. We can come in and help broker partnerships with social enterprises or off-grid renewable energy providers, or help them to lever their R&D or supply chain or venturing capability to provide energy to their customers. And what happens then is that their customers have access to reliable power for the first time and can raise income and then become a more attractive customer base. So it's kind of, I think that's where we can really lever the DNA and the ability to partner. And then maybe I'll just return to that first comment, and that is, look, partnerships, collaboration is all great in theory. I think there needs to be a complete step change in partnership efficiency. And I think that means, and it's essential, if we're going to create an energy transition, which is our goal as a foundation that raises the health, education, income, food security of hundreds of millions of people, then I think we need to apply commercial discipline to the learning in partnerships that happens, the pivoting in partnerships that happens, and actually the faster exits of partnerships that aren't working. It's not something that the philanthropic world tends to be good at.
Thank you, Richard. And it's true, the full range of assets that can come from the power of a corporate foundation, at the same time the independence. It's a key part of the equation. Asai, to conclude the panel discussion, the same question for you from the perspective, obviously, of Goldman Sachs Foundation that comes from a financial institution.
So I actually want to pick up where Richard began and left off. We've all reached this point in life where we know all relationships don't work. And one of the things that we've decided to do at Goldman in our philanthropic footprint is we pilot. And so before committing to a multi-year endeavor, we say we want to enter into a partnership as a pilot. We have a set time period in which we do that, and it allows us sort of a safe space to test, is that the right partnership, and is that workable? It allows the other party to do that too. So I'd offer that as one. The second thing we do is we do listening tours. We all know that those closest to the problem are often closest to the solution, but no one bothers to ask them. Mamadou said it best, where we bake a cake and we say, here, isn't this what you want to eat? Well, maybe, maybe not. And so I have never done a listening tour where I didn't come away smarter, where I didn't come back to the office to say, they identified a gap, we should be thinking about it differently. And sometimes we've scrapped what we were thinking about to say, I don't think we're heading in the right direction. So pilot one, I think, is a way to be more we treat philanthropy like a deal, if you will. right? Just because we're non-profit doesn't mean we're anti-profit. We're trying to help women entrepreneurs around the world be profitable. And so the same rigor, the same discipline that I did as an M&A banker is the same rigor and the same discipline that I put towards our philanthropic footprint. And so whether it's KPIs that are in place, real MOUs, check-ins along the way, those same corporate tools we shock against our philanthropic footprint, which I think keeps us at the highest level.
Thank you, Asai. So basically a managerial approach to philanthropy, which is something that was already mentioning during the panel. Okay, we have only a few minutes left. Maybe, I don't know if the organizers are going to give me a couple of minutes. We have 4 minutes. So maybe I will ask Sif and Faustina to make some concluding remarks and reflections on our panel today.
Yes, I think I'm supposed to come up here. I could have got that wrong though. Okay, so way. So if you haven't read it, I would definitely recommend it. Right. So your Honourable Excellencies, your Honourable Ministers, your Captains of Industries, ladies and gentlemen, we are honoured by your presence and we are very grateful that you made the time to come and be with us today. Well, am I supposed to have the clicker? Sorry, I've just remembered. Thank you. Am I clicking or you're going to click? Okay. Okay. We've gathered in vibrant Kigali, not only to pursue Africa's economic and social growth, but to forge a collective, a coordinated strategic pathway for Africa's Corporate Philanthropy Leaders Initiative to accelerate sustainable development impact in Africa, whilst creating business values through strategic, innovative philanthropic investments. Today is a pivotal moment when Africa corporate leaders unite for a better future. It is my honor to spearhead such a pioneering initiative. This initiative is more than a commitment, but a recognition of corporate sector's unique capabilities to propel our continent into unprecedented growth. We are all familiar with the challenges within our communities, from the economic, health inequities and educational gaps and climate threats. This initiative seeks to harness our collective capacity by blending philanthropic capital with initiatives, innovations, funding, mechanisms, and strategic partnerships. By launching this initiative today, our esteemed leaders commit to pioneering high-impact solutions that are sustainable. We have developed a framework that leverages the best philanthropic public policies and private sectors what private sector does best, which is bring on the can-do spirit. This framework will enable us to promote cross-learning. Our initiatives are bold. We are not only asking for funding commitments, but your commitment to this philosophy. The philosophy will be driven by a 10x multiplier. Your endorsement of this philosophy today will serve as the cornerstone for building a robust future. It will be a signal to the world that Africa is not just rising, but thriving, driven by leaders who are not afraid to think differently, partners who are boldly investing and making deeper investments within our continent. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to hand over to Frank.
Thank you, Faustina. And to the panel, please give them a round of applause. Keeping in line with the moderators being in blue, I'm going to MC for the next 10 minutes so I can look like Lorenzo here in his smart blue suit. But I'd like to ask the panel if you don't mind taking your seats on the ground. Thank you very much, folks. So the next section will look into a really critical piece of an initiative that's currently ongoing. If you think about the growth of philanthropy in Africa, you cannot avoid talking about the private sector. Because unlike the US, in Africa, philanthropy is driven by income. In the US, it's driven by wealth. And in Africa, inevitably, the income is driven by corporate philanthropy. So I'll ask Faustina to come back on stage so we can recognize some key partners who are part of the Africa Corporate Philanthropy Leaders Initiative. We appreciate the role that these leaders have played in driving philanthropy within the organizations in a manner that drives the kind of initiatives and corporate brands and behaviors that we think will be productive for this continent. So we're going to recognize them in order. Can we have the names of the organizations go up on the screen, please? And as the organization comes up, please come on stage. ABSA. And Eric, when you receive your thing, please come this way. Next. See Africa for. I will do this for myself.
Thank you for coming.
Aga Khan Foundation. Is there any representative from AKH here? Okay. BK Foundation. SIF, are you going to award yourself something? Next. I think we've gone backwards. Equity? Anyone? Okay. Impact Philanthropy Africa. KCB Foundation. And then KPC. M-Pesa Foundation. Nation Media. Safaricom Foundation. We'll recognize Stanbic in absentia, unless there's someone from Stanbic in the room, but I don't think there is. Tony Lumelo Foundation. Okay. And I think she'll collect on behalf of UBA as well. Vodacom Foundation. They're not here? Right? We need to send them some airtime to at least send us a video call. Okay, so can I ask everyone to please give this group a round of applause for all the work they've done. And as we look at leaders who are demonstrating and putting their words into action, these are people we can look up to. If you don't mind, can you come forward for a group picture, please? Can you pull this? Let's arrange ourselves.
Yes, the very tall people at the front.
Thank you very much. Please take your seats. Thank you.
Maybe I just want to conclude by thanking the panelists for being with us today for an excellent panel, and also for this very interesting concluding part of the session. I wish you all a good continuation of the forum. And maybe, Franca, you want to say some final things?
Just thank you everyone for making time to join us. We hope to engage many of you in many other conversations. Thank you.
Thank you very much.